The Diamond Necklace. Adapted by Guy de Maupassant. She was one of those pretty, charming young women who, as if by a mistake of fate, was born into a family of clerks. She had no money, no future, and no way to become famous, admired, loved, or married to a rich or important man. So she married a simple clerk who worked in the office of the Board of Education. She was plain because she could not afford pretty clothes or jewellery, but she was unhappy because she felt out of place. Women do not have a social rank or class of their own. Their charm, beauty, and grace are what make them special, instead of their family or background. Their natural elegance, quick thinking, and cleverness are their only nobility, making some daughters of poor families equal to great ladies. She suffered all the time because she felt she was born for a life of luxury and comfort. She hated her small apartment, the old walls, the worn-out chairs, and the faded curtains. Another woman of her class might not have noticed these things, but for her they were a constant source of pain and anger. The sight of her simple Breton maid, who helped around the small home, made her feel even more sad and filled her with hopeless dreams. She imagined grand waiting rooms with beautiful oriental decorations, lit by tall bronze lamps, with two large footmen in short trousers sleeping in big armchairs, made drowsy by the warm air from the heater. She thought of large living rooms decorated with old silk, filled with elegant furniture carrying priceless decorations. She dreamed of little beautifully scented rooms made for cosy afternoon chats with close friends, men who were famous and admired, whose attention every woman wanted. When she sat down for dinner at the small round table, where the tablecloth had already been used for 3 days, she looked at her husband. He happily lifted the lid of the soup pot and said, "Oh, a good pot pie. There's nothing better than that." But instead of feeling happy, she thought of elegant dinners, of shining silverware, and of wall tapestries decorated with images of ancient people and rare birds in magical forests. She imagined delicious food served on beautiful plates, of soft whispers and sweet compliments, spoken gently while eating the pink flesh of a trout or a tender piece of chicken. She had no fine dresses, no jewellery, nothing. And yet she loved only those things. She felt that she was born for them. She had a deep desire to be admired, to be wanted, to be charming and surrounded by attention. She had a rich friend, a schoolmate from the convent, but she did not like to visit her. Every time she came home from her friend's house, she felt miserable. She would cry for days, out of sadness, regret, and disappointment. One evening, her husband came home excited, holding a large envelope in his hand. "Here," he said, "this is for you." She quickly tore open the envelope and pulled out a printed card. On it were these words: "The Minister of Public Instruction and Madame Georges Ramponneau invite Mr. and Mrs. Loisel to a ball on Monday evening, January 18th, at the Minister's residence." Instead of being happy, as her husband had hoped, she threw the invitation angrily onto the table and muttered, "What do you expect me to do with that?" "But, my dear, I thought this would make you happy. You never go out, and this is a wonderful opportunity. I had to work hard to get this invitation. Everyone wants one, and only a few are given to employees. You will see all the important people there." She looked at him with an annoyed expression and said impatiently, "What do you expect me to wear to something like this?" He had not thought of that. He hesitated and said, "Why, the dress you wear when we go to the theatre. I think it looks very nice." He stopped talking, shocked and upset, when he saw his wife start crying. 2 big tears rolled slowly down from the corners of his eyes to the sides of his mouth. He stammered, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" She made a great effort to control her anger. Then, wiping the tears from her cheeks, she answered calmly, "Nothing. It's just that I have no dress, so I cannot go to this event. Give the invitation to one of your colleagues, whose wife has better clothes than I do." He felt sad but replied, "Let's think about this, Mathilde. How much would a suitable dress cost? Something simple that you could wear for other occasions too." She thought for a few seconds, trying to calculate an amount that she could ask for, without making her husband immediately refuse or react with shock, since he was very careful with money. Finally, she said in a hesitant voice. I don't know exactly, but I think 400 francs should be enough. He turned a little pale because he had saved exactly that amount to buy a hunting gun. He had planned to use it the next summer when he would go hunting with his friends in Nanterre, where they shot larks on Sundays. Still, he said, All right, I will give you 400 francs, but try to buy a nice dress. The day of the ball was getting closer, and Madame Loisel seemed sad, nervous, and worried. Still, her dress was almost ready. One evening, her husband said to her, What's wrong? You have been acting strangely for the past 2 or 3 days. She replied, I am upset because I don't have any jewellery, not even 1 stone, nothing to wear to make myself look elegant. I will look so poor. I would rather not go to this party. He said, You could wear fresh flowers. At this time of year they look very stylish. For 10 francs you could buy 2 or 3 beautiful roses. She was not convinced. No, she said, nothing is more embarrassing than looking poor among rich women. Then her husband suddenly shouted, How foolish we are! Go to your friend Mrs. Forestier and ask her to lend you some jewellery. You know her well enough to do that. She let out a cry of joy. That's true, she said. I didn't think of that. The next day, she went to her friend's house and told her about her problem. Mrs. Forestier went to her wardrobe, which had glass doors, took out a large jewellery box, brought it over, opened it, and said, Choose whatever you like, my dear. First, she saw some bracelets, then a pearl necklace, and then a Venetian cross made of gold and decorated with jewels. It was beautifully made. She tried on the jewellery in front of the mirror, hesitated, but couldn't decide whether to take them or not. Then she asked, Do you have anything else? Yes, of course, look for yourself. I don't know what you will like. Suddenly she noticed a black satin box. Inside there was a magnificent diamond necklace. Her heart started beating fast with overwhelming desire. Her hands shook as she picked it up. She placed it around her neck over her dress and stood there, completely amazed. Then, in a nervous and uncertain voice, she asked, Could you lend me this, just this one? Yes, of course. She threw her arms around her friend's neck, hugged her with excitement, and then left quickly, taking her precious treasure with her. The day of the ball arrived. Madame Loisel was a great success. She was the most beautiful of all, elegant, graceful, smiling, and full of joy. All the men noticed her, asked for her name, and wanted to be introduced to her. All the important officials wanted to dance with her. Even the Minister of Education paid attention to her. She danced with excitement, with passion, feeling drunk with happiness. She thought of nothing else, only the joy of being beautiful, the pride of being admired, and the wonderful feeling of success. She felt like she was floating in a cloud of happiness, enjoying the attention, the admiration, and the unspoken desires of those around her. It was a perfect victory, one that was sweet to a woman's heart. She went home around 4 o'clock in the morning. Her husband had been half asleep in one of the small rooms since midnight, along with 3 other men whose wives were still enjoying themselves at the ball. He placed a coat around her shoulders. It was a simple, everyday coat, not elegant at all, and it looked poor compared to her beautiful ball gown. She noticed this and wanted to leave quickly so that the other women who were covering themselves in rich furs would not see her. Loisel stopped her. Wait, he said. You will get cold outside. I will go find a cab. But she didn't listen and hurried down the steps. When they reached the street, they couldn't find a carriage. They started looking for one, waving at the coachman they saw in the distance. They walked toward the Seine, feeling hopeless and shivering from the cold. Finally, they found one of those old night carriages that can be seen in Paris after dark, as if they were too ashamed to appear during the day. The carriage took them to their home on Martyr Street, and they climbed the stairs to their apartment, exhausted. For her, the night was over. For him, he remembered that he had to be at work by 10 o'clock in the morning. She removed the coat from her shoulders and looked at herself in the mirror one last time, wanting to see herself in all her beauty again. Suddenly she let out a cry. The necklace was no longer around her neck. Her husband, who was already half undressed, asked, "What's wrong?" She turned toward him in panic. I don't have Mrs. Forestier's necklace anymore." He stood up in shock. "What? How can that be? That's impossible!" They searched everywhere, in the folds of her dress, in the coat, in the pockets, everywhere, but they could not find it. He asked, "Are you sure you still had it when we left the party?" "Yes, I touched it in the hallway when we were leaving." "But if you had dropped it in the street, we would have heard it fall. It must be in the cab." "Yes, that must be it. Did you write down the cab number?" "No, and you, did you see what the cab number was?" "No." They looked at each other, completely hopeless. Finally, Loisel got dressed again. "I'm going," he said, "to walk back the way we came, to see if I can find it." And he left. She stayed in her evening dress, too weak to go to bed. She sat on a chair, completely still, without any energy or thoughts. Around 7 o'clock, her husband returned. He had found nothing. He went to the police and the cab companies. He also put an ad in the newspapers, offering a reward. He did everything that gave them even a small hope of finding the necklace. She waited all day in shock, unable to believe what had happened. When Loisel returned in the evening, his face looked exhausted and pale. He had found nothing. "We have no choice," he said. "You must write to your friend and tell her that you broke the clasp on the necklace and that you are getting it repaired. That will give us some time to figure out what to do." She wrote the letter just as he told her to. At the end of a week, they had lost all hope. Loisel, who now looked 5 years older, said, "We have to find a way to replace the necklace." The next day they took the box that had held the necklace to the jeweller whose name was written inside. He checked his records and said, "It was not me, madame, who sold this necklace. I only provided the box." Then they went from one jeweller to another, looking for a necklace that looked exactly the same. They tried to remember every detail, feeling sick with worry and sadness. In a store in the Palais Royal, they finally found a diamond necklace that looked just like the one they had lost. It was priced at 40,000 francs, but they could buy it for 36,000. They asked the jeweller not to sell it for 3 days. They also made a deal that allowed them to return it for 34,000 francs if they found the lost necklace before the end of February. Loisel had 18,000 francs that his father had left him. He borrowed the rest. He borrowed the money, asking one person for 1,000 francs, another for 500, 5 gold coins from one, and 3 from another. He signed loan agreements, made risky promises, took money from moneylenders and anyone who would lend to him. He put his entire future in danger, risking his name and reputation, without even knowing if he would be able to pay it back. Worried about what would happen, crushed by the fear of poverty, and terrified of the suffering they would have to face, he went to buy the new necklace. He placed 36,000 francs on the jeweller's counter. When Madame Loisel returned the jewellery to Madame Forestier, her friend spoke in a cold voice. "You should have given them back sooner. I might have needed them." She did not open the jewellery box, as Madame Loisel had feared she would. What if she noticed the necklace had been replaced? What would she think? What would she say? Would she believe she had stolen it? Madame Loisel now knew the terrible life of poverty, but she did her part completely and bravely. The debt had to be paid, and she was determined to pay it. They let go of their maid and moved to a smaller apartment, renting rooms under the roof of an old building. She learned the hard work of running a household and the unpleasant tasks of the kitchen. She washed the dishes, scrubbing greasy pots and pans with her once delicate hands. She washed dirty clothes, shirts, and dish towels, then hung them outside to dry. Every morning she carried the trash down to the street and brought up water, stopping on each floor to catch her breath. Dressed like a poor woman, she went to the grocery store, the butcher, and the fruit market with a basket on her arm. She bargained for every last coin, trying to save as much of their little money as she could. Every month, they had to renew some of their loans, buying more time to pay while making payments on others. Her husband worked in the evenings, organising the accounts of shopkeepers. At night, he copied documents for 5 sous per page. This life continued for 10 years. After 10 years, they had paid back everything, every last coin, with the high interest charged by moneylenders, and even more interest on top of that. Madame Loisel looked old now. She had become a strong, tough woman, like those who live in poverty. Her hair was messy, her skirts were uneven, and her hands were rough and red. She spoke in a loud voice and scrubbed the floors with big buckets of water. But sometimes, when her husband was at work, she would sit by the window and think about that party from long ago, the ball where she had been so beautiful and admired. What would her life be like if she had never lost that necklace? Who knows? Who knows? Life is so strange and full of unexpected changes. Such a small thing can destroy or save a person. One Sunday, as she was walking in the Champs-Élysées to take a break from her hard week, she suddenly saw a woman walking with a child. It was Madame Forestier, still young, still pretty, still charming. Madame Loisel felt emotional. Should she speak to her? Yes, of course. Now that she had paid off the debt, she would tell her everything. Why not? She walked up to her and said, "Good morning, Jeanne." Her friend did not recognize her, and was surprised that this poor-looking woman was speaking to her so familiarly. She hesitated and said, "But madame, I don't know. You must be making a mistake." "No, I am Mathilde Loisel." Her friend gasped in shock. "Oh, my poor Mathilde, how much you have changed!" "Yes, I have had some very hard years since I last saw you. Some terrible years, and all because of you." "Because of me? What do you mean?" "Do you remember the diamond necklace you lent me to wear to the commissioner's ball?" "Yes, of course." "Well, I lost it." "How can that be? You gave it back to me." "I gave you another one exactly like it. It took us 10 years to pay for it. You can imagine how hard it was for us, since we had nothing. But now it is finally over, and I feel at peace." Madame Forestier stopped walking. She said, "Are you saying that you bought a diamond necklace to replace mine?" "Yes, you didn't notice? They looked exactly the same." And she smiled with quiet pride, feeling both happy and relieved. Madame Forestier was deeply moved. She took both of Madame Loisel's hands and said, "Oh, my poor Mathilde, my necklace was fake. It wasn't worth more than 500 francs.